Okay, Brian, I want to talk a little bit now about specific ages. I want to talk about, at the very beginning, I want to talk about our 20-year-olds, those folks that are at the beginning of their career and they have everything out ahead of them. They have all the opportunity in the world, and yet a lot of them are not making decisions right now that we would suggest they should be making.
Now, wait a minute. You left something out there, Bo. 20-somethings are billionaires.
They are billionaires.
They are right. Time billionaires. I tell you, the most powerful resource in wealth creation is how long you have for your money to grow and compound on your behalf. And 20-somethings have the biggest opportunity, but yet there's something in the background that's whispering to them, YOLO. Hey, you only live once. You could die tomorrow. Tomorrow's not promised, but you better enjoy right now. We have proof that this is everywhere.
Make sure you max out your 401k. Your future self will thank you.
Love it.
Okay, sounds good. My 401k balance is $200,000. It's too bad I just can't use it. Don't worry, your future self will thank you. My 401k balance just hit $500,000. Too bad I still can't use it. Don't worry, your future self will thank you. My 401k just hit $1 million. Too bad I still can't use it. Don't worry, your future self will thank you. 2 million! My 401k finally hit 2 million! Ow, my back!
For those listening to the podcast, he had at 65. So I think he thinks at 65 you just completely fall apart.
Yeah, he was going at every age. You know, at 20, save your future self. At 30, save your future self will thank you. At 40. And I do worry that a lot of young folks feel this way. Oh, why do I care about this? Why do I care about having millions of dollars when I'm 65? I'm not going to live much longer after that. That's forever in the future. Why would I care about what my future self thinks?
One of the big reasons we create this content is I'm hopeful that us encouraging you to save, even giving you a threshold of how much you should save, doesn't make you feel like you're entrapped by this, where you're regretting that you're not enjoying. I'm hoping that actually liberates you, because if you pay yourself first, once you reach those goals, the next dollar that comes into your possession, you can use it without regret. You've maximized the potential of that dollar, as well as then you can YOLO it up all you want and go build memories, create things, because you know you paid yourself first and did it right. And for all the YOLO crowd, this is something I think is so interesting. I said, Daniel, when we were looking at this video, I said, so he is making it seem like as you get older, it all falls apart. You know, don't do this because you just don't know what's going to happen in the future. And the reality is, most of you watching this video will live to a ripe old age. And we have the proof. I mean, look at the U.S. life expectancy from 1860 all the way through 2020. You can see,
older and older.
Now look, 1860, 40 years old. I would already be like, whoo, Brian. Man,
Doing good now.
You were good. I mean, but I can't believe it. You've already made it 10 years beyond when you were supposed to. No, that's not the way life works now. You can see the line is right there under 80 years of age. You will likely live to a ripe old age. Start acting accordingly.
Yeah, so often people say, well, tomorrow's not guaranteed. I don't know if tomorrow will be. Your risk is not that tomorrow won't come. The risk is tomorrow will come and you're unprepared. Even in that video that the guy showed, he was like, 65, my 401k finally hit 2 million. Imagine if he would have turned 65, his back went out, and he didn't have the $2 million. That's actually a much worse place to be in.
The quote in there was, your future self will thank you. Here's what you don't want. Your future self to hate the younger self because they see what a missed opportunity. Because by the way, I have so many people. I don't have anybody like myself who started saving at a young age, who gets to my age and I realize I'm not going to die with pennies. There's a good chance I'm going to have legacy planning and other things that a lot of the people we work with are going through the same things. I have zero regret about the things I didn't get to do in my 20s and 30s versus I know lots of people my age that have the midlife crises and other things because they just didn't do what they should have done from a behavioral standpoint. Don't be the person, not the quote, your future self will thank you. Don't be your future self will hate you for squandering that valuable resource of time. Get to work.
All right, so let's give you guys some spot checks. Let's talk about where our folks in their 20s are. So if you look at the average person in this country in their 20s, and all this data is from Fidelity and Vanguard, the average 401k balance for someone in their 20s is just under $20,000, $19,995. If you look at the average contribution rate, now this does not include employer contributions, this is just employee contribution rates, is about 7.4% for our 20-year-olds. So when I hear that, immediately I remember being in my 20s, I remember being broke, I remember things being tight. At least you're starting somewhere. But remember, if your goal is to have financial independence and to have it as early as possible so that you can have freedom and flexibility control as soon as possible, we think you should aspire to save 20 to 25% of your gross income. So if you're at 7.4, that's great. You should still try to see if you can get closer to 20 to 25%. If you want to know where your total net worth should be, where your portfolio should be, you should aim by the end of your 20s, by the end of the decade, to have about 1.2 times your annual income saved by the time you get to age 30.
Yeah, so you can see most people are hitting about a third, and this is going to be a consistent trend. It's not just the 20-somethings.
Yep.
People are only saving about a third of what we recommend. Here's what I would like to flip the script and say, okay, and I know in 20s, this is aspirational because you're starting your career. You're not making as much as you will make. You're just trying to build the behavior of good, building strong savings habits and investing, letting your money work for you. But what if you could do the 25%? What is that going to do for your future self?
Yeah, it gets really, really exciting. So let's say that conservatively you can earn 6% rate of return in your portfolio. We think that's really conservative. And your goal when you retire is to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. And we're going to assume that your portfolio can sustain a 4% withdrawal rate. All these are pretty broad assumptions, but pretty conservative. If you're a 20-year-old and you start saving 25% at 20, by the time you get to 49, assuming a relatively nominal wage growth rate of 1.5%, by the time you get to 49, you'll have a portfolio large enough to sustain a 4% withdrawal rate equal to 80% of your pre-retirement income.
Now, you used to hear a lot about FIRE, financial independence, retire early. I think what I see somebody who started at 20 who has reached this point by 49, it's the financial independence.
That's right.
Not necessarily retire, but I'm telling you now, instead of working because you're required to, you're working because you enjoy it. You own your time. Think about right now while you're young, you're trading your time for money, wages. In the future, if you do this right, you will trade your money, and it'll be money that came from compounding growth for more time. That is the exact opposite of what we saw in that video where he was like, your future self will thank you. And then, oh, I'm hurting so bad because I'm old. No, this is going to give you more freedom, more flexibility to live life like you want to sooner. The sooner you start being disciplined and putting your money to work.
So let's play out the rest of the decade. If you let's say that you don't get to start at 20 because you go to college, you start saving at 25. At 25, if you start saving 25% of your income, you can have an 80% income replacement by 54. And then if you wait until age 29 to start saving, you're still on track for early retirement. If you can save 25%, you'll be able to replace 80% of your income by the time that you get to age 58. So Brian, what would you say the takeaway is, or what would you say the big idea for someone in their 20s is that they should walk away from this with?
Yeah, is that put your money to work as soon as possible. Take advantage of the free money, take advantage of the savings opportunities, and building those good habits and behaviors financially, and your future self will be very happy with you. I want you, if you're a 20-something, how do you automate this process? Let's make it automatic for the people. Let's talk about the financial planning pyramid.
So if we think about this pyramid and sort of the base that we have to think through, number one is cash flow, right?
Yep.
Money coming in, money going out. And so when it comes to things to think about in your 20s, number one is obviously very basic. Spend less than you make. Learn how to live on less than the income that you have coming in. If you can just figure out that one thing, we call it deferred gratification. If you just figure out that one thing, you're already going to put yourself worlds ahead of your peers.
Yeah, and think about it in terms of a lot of people, I think they just wait to see what's left over at the end of the month.
Yep.
No, you need to be very proactive in your cash flow planning to where you're actually paying yourself first. That's back to that automatic wealth creation by going ahead and creating a system, dollar cost average every month, have money going into your investments so that you don't let this just whatever's left over is what I invest. That's not going to work.
Number two, and you hear us preach this one all the time, understand the dangers of debt. Now, we are not here at the Money Guy Show anti-debt or against all debt, but we do recognize that it is a tool that can be incredibly useful in your financial toolbox, but it can also be incredibly dangerous. And I worry that a lot of folks in their 20s use it carelessly and use it haphazardly.
Well, but I want to be careful because, you look at UGA football. There's a danger of some of the coaches when you look back through the history. They were known as players coaches, meaning they didn't squeeze to get they were too friendly with their players. They didn't get the best out of everybody. You kind of want to go with that field general where you like your coach, but you want to make sure that you got a little bit of fear there. And that's why I do think that at this stage, if you're not scared of your debt, that's why we always talk about treat it like it's a chainsaw. If you're using debt and you're not scared, you're probably using it wrong. And that falls on the credit cards. Because I think in your 20s, that is the big risk, is because you look at this as a bridge. I'll just take the credit card debt. It will bridge me until I make more money and then I'll pay myself back. The problem is no, it's a siren song. You'll get trapped. You'll get behind and you'll look back in that one bad mistake. If you can't pay it off monthly, don't even use it.
And this last one, I think in today's society, in today's culture, this is one that's interesting. Spend what is left after saving. You said this, Brian. Automate your savings. Learn how to do that early. And then live on the cheap. Yeah. I think the 20s is probably the only time in your life where it's okay to live incredibly cheaply, to really pinch pennies, to really, I don't mind. This is not the greatest health thing, but youth will cover a lot of this. When I was in my 20s, I don't know that I had the best diet. I was going to Publix and I was buying the 2-for-1 cereals and I was eating that for a lot of meals. I'm not recommending that as your nutrition plan. But man, it was pretty awesome having those extra dollars to be able to put into my Roth IRA.
I'd like to say we're not recommending Captain Crunch every meal. That is definitely not a recipe
I eat
for
Honey Nut Cheerios.
Success.
That's the healthy one.
But I do want you to bedazzle the basics. There's no reason that you can't still enjoy your life, but do it in a very cost-effective way. And the reason we're so focused on the discipline, the deferred gratification, is because there's exponential echoes, meaning that whatever you do in your 20s will just have tremendous exponential growth opportunities in the long term. So it is, if your car payment is $250 a month versus $700 a month, and you get to take that difference and actually throw it into investments, I'm telling you, your 50-year-old self will give you the sloppiest hug you've ever seen because they'll be so happy that they'll leave tear stains on you as you back away from the hug. But it is one of those things. Focus on that great, big, beautiful tomorrow. It doesn't happen without taking small little steps while you're in your 20s. And Bo, this leads to, I want to talk about risk management because we're talking about how to get the cash flow right, but we do have to make sure that a little thing that should be a setback doesn't throw you into desperation and chaos.
That's exactly right. If you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, you know that we love the financial order of operations. It's a 9-step tried and true process to get you through the financial decisions you have to make. Well, step number 1 in the FOO is to have your deductibles covered. That means your health insurance deductible, your auto deductible, your home deductible, so that if something happens, if that unknown Tuesday event takes place, you at least have money to keep yourself out of the ditch. And you may say, oh, well, that doesn't seem like a big hurdle. That doesn't seem like a huge threshold to get over. We know that right now, 56% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. I mean, if some came along, they couldn't come up with $1,000 without going into debt. So this shows us that if all you have done is covered your deductibles, you are likely doing better than 56% of the other folks in this country right now.
Historically, this number is close to 60%. We look at this number every year, and I think the only reason it's at 56% is probably post-pandemic. There was, money that had been paid out and so forth. I wouldn't be shocked to see this number go right back to 60. Don't be that. I mean, that's a step one of financial abundance when we go through our levels of wealth, is just having enough money to where you can cover the deductibles covered. So you guys, and by the way, I feel like it's cruel if we talk about the FU and we don't say moneyguy.com/resources. If you too want to download what the 9 steps are, if you want to go to learn.moneyguy.com, we have a deeper dive course that you can go check out. But another thing, when you're in your 20s, you're healthy.
Yep.
So a lot of people, I think you feel bulletproof. Health insurance is expensive. It's boring. A lot of 20-year-olds don't even feel like they need it. But we want people to have health insurance.
I get so sad when I see someone say, hey, I'm about to hit 26. I've been on mom and dad's health insurance, but I'm about to age out of that. That extra $200 a month, $300, whatever it is, I'm just going to avoid. I don't go to the doctor. I don't need it. The problem is the reason that we have insurance is to cover those things that we don't know, those uh-ohs that we're not prepared for. You don't want to be in the situation when you're 27, 28, 29 years old where you get in that car accident or you have that accident at the gym or whatever the thing is that puts you in the hospital and you are literally flying naked because you have no coverage. Don't do that. Make sure you have the right types of insurance in place.
Well, we also know a lot of bankruptcies are caused by medical type things that happen. And you don't want to have an oopsie or a bad thing, just like you described, really side rail you to where even if you file bankruptcy, it's going to take close to a decade,
That's right.
7 to 10 years to get back to ground zero where you even have the ability to do normal things like mortgages and so forth. It's just not worth the risk. Have health insurance. We also listed have property insurance. What we're talking about here, a lot of you probably do rent.
Yep.
I mean, and look, even though you're not in charge of the grounds, you are in charge of everything that's inside the walls. So renter's insurance should not even be overlooked if you're in your 20s. It's too cheap to protect yourself from the big oopsies that totally derail and side rail your financial life.
And then the other thing in your 20s you want to be thinking about is you want to be building your emergency reserves. Again, you might not fully have step number 4 of the FU maxed out. You might not have that full 3 to 6, but you ought to be working towards that. Once you got the deductibles covered, then you want to make sure that you have somewhere between 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in cash on the sidelines. Again, in case something happens, job loss, medical emergency, whatever, you can cover those unknown circumstances that might happen.
So we've kind of covered cash flow. We've covered risk management. Let's talk about how the sexy stuff that actually creates wealth, and that's investing, putting that army of dollar bills to work. Here's the first thing I need 20-somethings to know. You recognize you're a billionaire of time.
Yep.
I mean, that is the biggest part. When I talk about the 3 components of wealth creation, we have discipline. That's your focus. That's that deferred gratification. That creates margin that allows you to invest money. You know, cash flow is always needed. And then that third component is the most important component, which is time. And since when you're in your 20s, you are a billionaire of seconds and minutes. It is crazy for you not to maximize the exponential growth opportunity.
And this is just how powerful that time can be. You've heard us say it all the time. On every show that we have, Brian keeps a koozie right there that says this $1 can turn into $88. There's this concept that for someone who's 20 and they put $1 to work,
21 for the beer drinkers.
If you're a beer drinker, you got to be 21 to retire at 66. But if you're just a 20-year-old working, $1 can turn into $88 by the time that you get to age 65. At the early parts of your career, your dollars are more powerful than they will be at any other time in your working life. So the sooner you can figure this out, the earlier you can start saving, the better off you will be. If you want to know what your multiplier is based on your age, go to moneyguy.com/resource. So we have this wealth multiplier. You can see it on the screen, and it shows that at 20, it's 88. But by the time you get to 25, it drops down to 44. Still super powerful, but the earlier you figure it out, the better off you will be for the long term.
Yeah, and a lot of people, if you're brand new, because look, y'all wonder, we cover these concepts. 50% of you are brand new to the Money Guy channel. And I want to tell you, you're saying, how? Tell tell me, how do I do this? What's going to get me this type of multiplier? In the beginning, there's nothing wrong with index target retirement funds where you basically have to answer two questions. How much can I save? When do I need it? They will do all the heavy lifting of the asset allocation, dealing, being very aggressive while you're young, getting more conservative as you're older. Now, look, you will outgrow this at some point, but it's that great, big, beautiful tomorrow moment where you're super successful. You need a financial planner. But in the beginning, an index target retirement fund that doesn't have commissions, and the three biggest providers are like the Vanguards, the Fidelity Investments, the Charles Schwabs. They're going to be able to hook you up. Focus on how much you can save more than where the money goes, because savings rate is so much more important than the mix of things when you're starting out.
All right, so now as we're working up in the pyramid, we get to more complex items. And one of the items that gets a little more complex is tax planning. It's so funny with where I sit right now. I look back to my 20-year-old self and I'm kind of envious of what tax planning was like for me back then. I used to think, and you said this too, Brian, man, I can't wait till it's complicated. I can't wait till I have K1s and Schedule Cs and Schedule Es and all these different things. In your 20s, don't try to make your taxes any more complicated than they have to be. I miss the time, Brian, when I could take on like April the 14th, I could spend about 20 minutes going through my tax return and just get it done very, very quickly. That will change. So don't try to complicate your tax life. It's okay early on if it's fairly simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, this is when you're in your 20s, more than likely you're doing your taxes in the Februarys because you're just taking your W-2.
Oh, yeah, you want to get that refund
You want to get that
That's
refund
right. Yeah,
money, coming in. So yeah, don't go chasing complex. It will find you with further success. It will come. You can use tools like TurboTax. Yep. We even threw out the referral because I know what you volunteered with at UGA. And this is everywhere. VITA is a not-for-profit organization that helps people in the community prepare their taxes. Matter of fact, we even have some clients that volunteer.
Yeah,
that is
as their retirement gig.
As they retire, they retire into, this is one of their community involvement things. I think that's outstanding because we all know financial mutants get this stuff.
Yeah, if you're curious, and it's a free service. It's volunteer income tax assistance. You can go look up VITA. It's a really, really great program. Not a bad thing to think about if you have a very simple tax situation. All right. Well, then we have estate planning. Now, I don't know about you, Brian. In my 20s, estate planning was not something that was like top of mind. I wasn't thinking about my mortality there. And I wasn't thinking that really there was a lot of work for me to do there. So one of the things we said that just sort of a basic thing is make sure beneficiaries are updated on your account. So if you have a Roth IRA, make sure you have a beneficiary added to that. If you have your 401k that you are contributing to, make sure that you have beneficiaries listed on that account so that in the unbelievable event that something did happen to you, your assets would pass to the people that you want your assets to pass to.
Estate planning, if you have, because there are things that complicate life. Obviously, if you have children and other things, make sure your estate planning. You still would probably want a will or something.
Sure.
We had a whole discussion: is this a napkin estate plan? Is this boilerplate? I think in the beginning, the biggest thing is make sure those big risk, like, hey, who's going to take care of the kids, and and how my assets are going to pass. Just make sure you are giving a little thought to that. It's probably not going to be super complex in your 20s, but it still deserves your attention so that no mistakes are made, just in case.
For folks in their 20s, when we think about our three distinct tax buckets, the one place where we think you'll probably get the most excited and will probably begin to be built first is probably the tax deferred bucket because of free money.
Yeah, free money. I tell you guys all the time, this is one of the greatest things about when you start working in your first real job and you get benefits and you find out your employer is giving you 50 cents on the dollar or dollar for dollar matching, or maybe they even do non-elective deferrals where just for showing up, they're going to put a percentage of your income into a retirement account. That's all free money. We always want you to maximize that because especially if there's like a matching formula, think about it, if it's 50 cents on the dollar, that is a guaranteed 50% rate of return. If it's dollar for dollar, guaranteed 100% rate of return. There's nothing else out there like that. So you have to maximize those returns. So that's why, and here's the reality of why this is tax deferred. For your employer to take the deduction to get that benefit, they have to they're going to put it in tax deferred, meaning the government's going to give them the deduction for that contribution in your account. You're going to be able to let it grow tax deferred, meaning every year you're not going to pay income taxes on the growth, but eventually when you pull that money out in retirement, Uncle Sam is going to want to take their cut.
So I'm going to say it a little bit differently. When you go to elect your 401k or your retirement contributions, you get to choose tax deferred or tax free, because a lot of plans now have a Roth option. The employer money always goes into that tax deferred bucket. So naturally, even if you're doing Roth contributions, you're going to get some tax deferred dollars being built up when you're in your 20s.
So more than likely, your employer portion for sure will be tax deferred. Now let's talk about what's exciting to me is that second bucket, the tax free.
That's right. This is most often when we think about tax free assets, we think about a Roth IRA. And for most young folks, this is the area that I always tell them when you're going to start your wealth building journey, when you're going to start building towards financial independence, a Roth IRA is probably the single best place for you to start.
But tell us, because a lot of people have curiosity, what makes Roth so great?
Yeah, so there's a number of benefits that come with a Roth. I mean, obviously, when you put money into a Roth, you're not getting a tax deduction on the front end, but there are a plethora of benefits that you get while you have the Roth. Here's one of them. No required minimum distributions. When you get to age 72 and you have 401ks or IRAs or 457s, the government makes you lose some of your tax flexibility. They make you start pulling money out of those accounts. That's not true with Roth IRAs. Another great benefit of Roth IRAs is a lot of providers have really low cost plans where you can open an account, no fees, you can buy very low cost index funds and pay low internal expenses. So it's a very cost effective way to build up your wealth. In addition to that, as you invest those dollars, they will grow tax free, assuming you meet certain types of distributions. You're over 59 and a half and the account's been open for at least 5 years. So not only do the earnings grow tax free, you also get to pull the money out completely tax free.
Yeah, and what I like about most of these retirement options, Roth IRAs specifically, you get complete access to the investment universe.
That's right.
I mean, if you think about, we talk about index investing. We love it because it's low cost, it's tax efficient, and so forth. If you want to go look at Fidelity Investments, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, all the low cost providers, you can do that in your Roth IRAs.
That's exactly right. And then the last thing that we really love about Roths is you have some flexibility with your contributions. We know that you can put up to $6,000 a year into a Roth IRA, but you don't have to put in $6,000 a year. If all you can do is you're starting out and this is the very first dollar that you can save and you're only able to save $20 a month, that's great. A Roth IRA will provide a mechanism, so long as you meet the requirements, where you can do that.
Now, Bo, I'm going to give pay some, I don't want to say respect, but I'm definitely going to give the trolls some action here.
Okay, sure.
Because they get mad when I talk about Roth accounts grow tax-free. Because there is a catch with Roth accounts and the fact that when you put the money into whether it's a Roth IRA, a Roth 401k, a Roth 403b, any of the tax-free accounts, you don't get a deduction
That's right.
on that contribution. That is the rub, because if you put it in a traditional account, like a traditional 401k, a traditional 403b, the government, just like they gave your employer a deduction on the match, when you put it in on the traditional side as an employee with your salary deferrals, you also get a deduction on your tax return. So it lowers your current taxes. Roth accounts don't get that benefit.
That's right.
But anything that grows out of it, meaning you put $10 in, that $10 turns to $100, 90 out of that $100 is going to be completely tax-free. That's pretty powerful, and we've actually created an illustration to give you an example.
Yeah, let's talk about this in very real, very practical terms. Let's look at the power of tax-free accounts. So let's say that you have two individuals that are going to contribute to a Roth IRA or to an IRA, and they're going to max it out at $6,000 every year. You have one who's going to do the traditional version. They're going to put money into a traditional IRA. They're going to get a tax deduction. We're going to assume in our illustration that they spend that tax savings. So they're not going to be disciplined and save that. They're going to take that tax deduction. They're going to spend the tax savings. And then we have another individual who's going to invest $6,000 in Roth. So one's putting $6,000 in traditional. One is putting $6,000 in a Roth. So that way we're comparing apples to apples in terms of dollar invested. Well, if they can earn 8% over the next 40 years in these accounts, At the end of that time period, after 40 years, they would both have portfolios of $1,745,504.
Yeah, that's linear math. They're equal to exactly the same amount. Now, you said something key, and I think it's worth repeating, keeping people at bay. The person that funded the Roth, even though they're funding after tax, in a way, they are funding more because the traditional might have gotten a tax benefit. The Roth did not. So there is something that puts the hand on the scale. But that tax-free growth, when you see the multiplier effect, there's a reason I have this on my koozie. That $1 can become $88 if you're given enough time. Wait until you see what that looks like when it's completely tax-free.
So at the end of their investing journey, when they go to pull out the money, the Roth contributor who had grown their portfolio to $1.7 million, their portfolio is actually worth $1.7 million. But if we assume a tax rate of 25%, when the person in the traditional IRA built $1.7 million and they get to pull that out, it's actually only worth about $1.3 million. Roth Rachel, or the Roth contributor, actually had $400,000 more in spendable dollars at retirement, which is pretty powerful.
So remember, we're talking about 20-somethings right now. Guys, I know if you're in your 20s, you're not earning your peak dollars yet. That's going to come to in your late 40s, early 50s. I get it. You're thinking every dollar needs to go towards lifestyle or just paying the mortgage or paying the rent. I want you to squeeze, just do something, because every dollar with that multiplier effect is so powerful. We've talked about Roth IRAs and Roth accounts with your employer. There is another account that grows tax-free.
Yeah, this is a health savings account. If you've heard us talk about it, you've heard us mention before, it is one of the most exciting, most powerful vehicles in the entire investment universe, because most often it is triple tax advantage.
Well, I feel like, because I loved on Roth accounts a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Because you know, I get excited. I want 20-somethings especially to get excited about that tax-free growth opportunity. But there was a flaw with Roth IRAs in the fact that you do not get a tax deduction on the initial contribution. It's only the growth long-term that's truly growing tax-free. HSAs, because they are triple tax advantage, correct that problem.
Yep, so there are a few benefits. Now, first of all, unfortunately, HSAs are not available to everyone. You do have to be participating in a high deductible health plan to be eligible to contribute to an HSA. So assuming your health insurance satisfies that requirement and you can open up a health savings account, here are the benefits. Brian already mentioned this. You get a tax deduction on the contributions you put in, no matter your income. So if you make $1 million a year, you put money into an HSA, you get a tax deduction on that contribution. You can then invest those dollars if you so choose, and those assets grow tax deferred. You don't have to pay taxes while they're growing in the account. And then later on, when you decide to pull that money out, if you use the distributions for qualified medical expenses, they are completely tax-free.
So that's tremendous benefit there if you think about it. Plus, there's actually one more benefit in the fact that you get to, if you run this through your employer plan, it is going to offset, meaning you're not going to have to pay payroll taxes on that employer benefit. And there's one other, we could have put one more asterisk in the fact that if you get to 65 years of age and you've saved more in your health savings account than what you're going to need in healthcare, you can use this as a closeted retirement account. It's just that you won't get the tax-free component on all the growth elements.
Now, we talk about this all the time, Brian, because we've looked at the numbers. We know the analytics associated with health savings accounts. 96% of health savings account users don't actually use them this way. They actually put the money in, they use the dollars. If you can be part of that 4% who actually invest those dollars, this can be a huge tool in your financial tool belt.
I do think we had this discussion earlier. It might be aspirational for a 20-something because it depends on how healthy or how little you're using your health insurance. Because hopefully you are in the healthy part of your life where you're not going to the doctor a lot. So there is a chance that you put that money in the health savings account. If you're not using it for current medical expenses, maybe you wait a year or so and then you deploy it once you can cover some of the deductible thresholds or even the out-of-pocket thresholds. You just want to make sure you are covered, because I understand resources are tight in your 20s, but if you can maximize the exponential growth, it's awesome.
So then there is this third bucket. We've talked about tax deferred. We've talked about tax free. Unfortunately, that third bucket, the after-tax bucket, might be hard for folks to build in your 20s. We've already talked about it. In our 20s, most of us are broke. There's not a lot of discretionary income lying around. And once we've done the tax-deferred piece, and once we've done the tax-free piece, and we're following the financial order of operations, there might not be a ton left over. And in your 20s, that's okay. Well, let's take a look at how the average American is doing. So Daniel pulled some stats for us that were fantastic, and this is from a number of different sources that we have amalgamated. And this is what we have determined, that the median income for someone in their 20s right now is about $28,000 a year. Well, if you look at the median net worth for someone in their 20s, it's about $7,864. And so the question you have is, okay, well, is that good? Is that not good? Remember, we have a formula. It's a little bit of a take on the money guy, the millionaire next door formula. We call it the money guy wealth formula, where you want to determine if you're an average accumulator of wealth or if you're a prodigious accumulator of wealth. So you take your age times your income and divide by 10 plus the number of years until you get to 40. And if your mind just went buggy, don't worry.
Don't worry, we have it.
We're going to show it to you in a second. But what we want to show you is if we have a median income for folks in their 20s of about $28,000 a year, then if you want to be an average accumulator of wealth and your income is around that $28,000 mark, this is for a 25-year-old, then your net worth should be about your annual income, about $28,000. Or if you want to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, you want your net worth to be about double that amount. So someone who's 25 making $28,000 a year, to be a prodigious accumulator, they should have about $56,000 of total net worth. That's investments and equity in your home and automobiles and those types of things that actually at the bottom of your net worth statement, it should be about $56,000.
When I look at this data and I see the median net worth for somebody in their 20s is $7,864, in a lot of respects, that's actually a relief for me, because I want all of my financial mutants watching this and being like, look, this shows me that despite what social media is telling you, a lot of your peers are just as broke as you.
That's
now,
right.
They might have car payments, they might have other things.
Might be faking.
But use this to look at the data of what the median American looks like and say, this is the reality of the situation. I don't have to fake it. I can actually start letting the financial order of operations do this appropriately, take a little bit of today for saving and investing for the future so I have that great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Let these numbers be motivating to you, because you can see nobody's rich around you. So use this as an opportunity to start investing in yourself.
So as a reminder, if you want to do these calculations on your own, this is what we call the money guy adjusted formula. To be an average accumulator of wealth, you take your age times your income and you divide that by 10 plus the number of years until you get to 40. Now, if you're listening to the 20 section and you're someone in your 40s, you don't get to add the numbers. You just divide it by 10. Well, to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, you want to have twice that number. So we thought one thing that might be helpful for all of my 20-year-olds out there, maybe you're not by a calculator or you don't like to do math in your head. We just said, okay, let's look at folks from 20 to 29, and let's look at 4 different income ranges. Let's look at someone who makes $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, and $200,000. And you may be saying, oh my goodness, no 20-year-olds make $200,000. No, they do, and you're listening to the show. There's a lot of our folks in high tech that are super, super productive. It is not uncommon. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you're out there listening to on iTunes or iHeartRadio or Spotify, we have a chart on the screen, and you just go kind of pick your age. All right, I'm 25 years old, and I make about $100,000 a year. If I want to be a prodigious accumulator, my net worth should be about $200,000. So this will give you an idea of where you stand. And remember, if you're kind of comparing yourself to your peers, the median net worth of someone in their 20s right now is about $7,800. So if you really want to be a financial mutant, your number should be closer to the numbers that we're showing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. I love that we give the range, because I know when I was in my 20s, I mean, I think I shared with you guys my starting salary out of college was $28,000. It doesn't mean just because you're not making $200,000 a year in your 20s that you're not destined for greatness. I just think it means we've given you range, maximize your potential, not comparing yourself to others, so you steal yourself that joy.
All right, so let's think through, okay, what does it actually take to be a millionaire? How do I become a millionaire? Well,
Rubber meets the road.
If you're a 20-year-old and you can invest at least $95 a month, every month from now until the time you get to 65, and we assume that you can earn 10% when you're 20 and 9.9 at 21 and 9.8 at 22 and so on, then that $95 that you invested every month can turn into $1 million by the time that you get to 65. If you wait until you're 25 years old, well, you can't just save $95 anymore. You have to save $158 a month. Well, that's if you want to do the ongoing behavior. A lot of folks have asked us, well, hey, what if I just wanted to think about how much would it take right now to turn into $1 million? If I want to think about this whole 88 times over idea, for a 20-year-old, you would need to have saved a lump sum of $11,318. Or for a 25-year-old, you would need to have saved $22,708 in order for those dollars to turn into $1 million by the time you reach age 65.
So a lot of you watching this, I mean, I have an 18-year-old, my oldest daughter is 18. According to this, she's going to be a millionaire.
She's going to be a millionaire by the time she gets there.
I can already hear it. Some people are saying $1 million's good, but I'm more of, I paid attention to that Millionaire Next Door book, and there is what's called prodigious accumulator of wealth, meaning you're twice what the typical person's doing. We know that if you want to, it's as easy as doubling both these numbers. So for a 20-year-old, you want to save $190 a month, 25-year-old, $316, 20-year-old is close to $23,000 a year, or at the beginning, just one time. And then for the 25-year-old, if you got $45,000, you're on track to having $2 million at retirement. Pretty powerful stuff.
It's because you have time on your side. So if you are someone in your 20s, don't blow this opportunity. Don't blow your shot, because in your 30s, things change a touch.
Let's actually shift the conversation, talk about what do you do to catch up, even though you're a 20-year-old that's trying to catch up.
That's the first point. And what the great news is that in your 20s, it's kind of hard to really be far behind, because even in the latter part of your 20s, you still have your most valuable resource on your side. You still have time. So I think recognizing that even if you've made bad decisions, even if you've gotten yourself in a bad spot, even if you've racked up credit card debt or you bought the car you couldn't afford, you still have enough time that you can right this ship.
So you focused on, I love that you have to really work hard not to screw up your 20s, because there is so much potential with every dollar that comes into your possession. I want to talk to you I think the biggest thing you can focus on are those consumption habits. I think that is going to be the biggest thing people can do. And the best way, I've already told you, the industry's working against you. They're trying to stretch out those loans. They're also trying to tell you, hey, you can consume everything $10, $100 at a time. But instead of thinking about it at that point of sell expense, because here's where I think we fall into the trap of, we say, hey, it's just $9 a month.
Oh, $9. I can easily afford $9. I got $10 in my pocket right now.
So the problem with that mindset, though, is $9 a month quickly turns into close to $100 a year. $100 a year, if you put it into the money multiplier that we shared at moneyguy.com/resources, could be $10,000 potentially from your retirement self. So you need to think differently about every dollar that comes in your possession. Let's do the same thing with debt and loans, because you think about the terms of, you can finance anything $200 a time. They'll let you go buy jet skis. They'll let you buy new cars. They'll let you buy boats, RVs. Everything's $200 a month. The problem is that's just the cash flow element. Every time you take down that new loan, you're obviously borrowing from your future self. Yep. You will have to pay that money back. So you're digging the hole deeper. Be very aware that long amortization schedules are not your friend.
So there are two things that you really need to do. You need to figure out, how do I become an expert on the things that I need versus the things that I want? Do I need that $9 subscription? Do I need that fill in the blank? Or is it just something I want? And the second thing you can do, and Brian, you talk about this all the time, when it comes to consumption, when it comes to things that we buy, if we can gamify it a little bit, perhaps we can adjust our consumption behavior.
Yeah, I do that by over-researching anything I want to buy, even as Amazon purchase. I'm reading the reviews. I'm comparing all the alternatives I could be buying. I think that gamifying or extending the purchase process actually has a cool-down period effect, so you're not so hot and bothered that you're hyper-focused on buying something. It actually lets you cool down to more of a rational mindset. That is a good thing. Use that research mentality to help save yourself from the consumption.
And so here's the other thing that you need to do in your 20s. If you're out there, you are facing a decade where there are going to be a lot of big life decisions that you're likely going to make or likely going to begin starting to make. You need to understand what your guardrails are. What are the things that I can employ that will keep me between the lines? Now, the first one, we talk about this all the time. If you've listened to our show for any amount of time, you know we think that you should follow the financial order of operations. If you don't know what that is, go to learn.moneyguide.com. We have a course that you can work through, or you can go get our free deliverable at moneyguide.com/resources to understand the 9 tried and true steps of how you should deploy each one of your dollars. If you follow this plan, it takes the guessing game out of your 20s of, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And am I putting my dollars where I'm supposed to be putting my dollars?
And I think it's important. We want people aspirationally, I say aspirationally, only in your 20s, we want you to save and invest 25% of your gross income. I get it. When you come out in your early 20s, money's going to be tight. That's okay. Your money's also super valuable, super powerful, and will grow. So even if you're not doing 25%, if you're starting off at 5%, 10%, everything's going to be super powerful. But I do want you to have the aspirational goal that by the time you enter your 30s, you are at that full 25% of your gross income.
And then as you're thinking about these big decisions that you're making, like housing, where you're going to live, make sure that you understand you need to keep your total housing cost, whether that be rent or that be principal and interest on a mortgage, down to 25% of your gross income. If you start doing the calculations and find that your housing is trickling above that, you may want to do some recalculations around, am I putting my dollars in the place where they really need to be going?
And then a big trap that I see people falling is that car. You want to reward yourself for graduating college or making it to the next phase of life. And it's so easy with that drawn out amortization of financing cars 5, 6, even 7 years in the future. I want you to don't listen to the car people trying to sell you the car and get in your back pocket. I want you to use 23/8. What that means is I want you to put down 20% on your next car purchase. I want you to finance it no longer than 3 years and have it paid off. And I don't want you to have the payment exceed 8% of your gross income. You're going to quickly realize this keeps you in the guardrails of you won't be buying luxury. Yep. You'll be buying just a dependable, reasonable car, because we even have the caveat, I don't want you financing anything that's luxury. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm in my 20s, why not have the BMW? No, any type of luxury brand, same as cash, you have to pay for that car with cash. And always remember, all of this has the umbrella when we're talking about 23/8. Your monthly payment cannot exceed what you're putting into your monthly investments, because you're doing this upside down. I want you to have $1,000 a month going into your investments with a $200 car payment. I do not want you to have a $1,000 car payment with $200 going into your investments. Your future self will be so upset if you get that upside down.
And we've already said this, but credit card debt is a no-go. Just say no. If you have to put something on a credit card, we would argue you should not be buying that thing. So if you find you have a hard time subscribing to that, get rid of the credit card. Cut it up. Don't use it. It's a tool that can be helpful, but it can also be dangerous. So no on credit card debt.
Now, Bo did not say no to credit card use.
That's right.
He said no to credit card debt. So if you're not paying it off a month, heed what he said. And then remember, a little goes a long way. You really do have that opportunity to take just a little bit of today for that great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Bo him and Daniel worked together, and we came up with, hey, just like we have the wealth multiplier. Let's reverse engineer that, flip it upside down so we can show everybody each additional 1% of saving and investing for the future of your income. What could that mean to your future self? Check this out.
Yeah, so when you're young, the marginal decisions that you make can have a huge impact. So for a 25-year-old, if you can save 1% additional of your income, when you get to retirement, when you get to financial independence, when you get to age 65, that additional 1% in savings can replace 6.6% of your retirement living expenses. It's pretty easy mathematics to work through. If you save 2%, you can double that. 3%, you can triple that. This just shows how much those small decisions early on can have a huge impact later on. So if you feel like you're behind, if you feel like you've not been saving up to this point the way that you should be, figure out how you can increase those percentage points on your saving and start really building your army of dollar bills.
Yeah, just to close out, this is why 20s, remember, it's hard to screw this up. The only way you can screw this up is really you're not putting anything towards investing. So if you find yourself struggling just to get this very powerful automated habit of saving and investing for the future, I want you to make sure you are prioritizing to look at needs, things that you love, and then what are the wants? And if you can categorize under those three categories, you're always going to find out, look, needs you can't avoid. You got to have shelter. You got to have transportation. You got to have clothes. I get that. But the loves, I want you to be able to prioritize that. But this is also going to let you isolate what are the things you're thinking, hey, my life would just be better. Or maybe I'm falling prey to marketing. Separate out those wants. And maybe that's the part that turns into the investment that can be your great, big, beautiful tomorrow.